Hi, folks, the Filipina here, and today we're going to continue our discussion with Gracie about the legal issues here in the Philippines that you guys might run into. We're also going to talk about today what to do if you get arrested by the police, the exception for legally owning property here in the Philippines, the age of consent issue, and also writing a valid will. And we're also going to clarify some of the cohabitation laws. So stay tuned, buckle up, and let's go. Hey, Gracie, it's so great to talk to you again and continue our discussion of legal topics here in the Philippines. So, guys, here's attorney Gracie Bellingan-Bennett, our one of the best attorneys here in Dumaguete City.
Thank you, P. Thank you for having me here again.
Of course. So first, let's start with, I know that most foreigners know that they can't own land here, just condos, but they can lease land from a Filipino citizen and legally own the house they build on it. Correct, Gracie?
Correct.
Right. And what usually happens is that they buy land under a Filipina's name and then lease it from her real cheap, and they can renew the contract, right?
Correct. Yeah. But it has to be a reasonable amount stated in.
So you cannot just rent it for 1 peso for 50 years, 25 years plus 25 years.
That kind of contract of lease can be voided later on by the court. And yeah, so you have to be very careful in doing a contract of lease with a landowner in order for that lease to be valid.
So it should be a
reasonable amount, because it would depend on the property, the location.
Okay. So this is the thing, but what happens if he marries the Filipina after that lease is signed? Isn't it true that you can't lease from a spouse?
If the lease was executed after the marriage, definitely the lease contract is void. But considering it was executed when they were not yet married, so the lease will continue its validity in spite the fact that they got married.
Okay. So as long as they signed the lease before getting married, then that lease will stand.
Correct.
Okay. That's good news. All right. So what's the best way to do it? Like, sign the lease before getting married, and obviously have a prenuptial agreement before getting married. So he'll be protected, that he cannot be evicted, and the house will be a separate asset. It's still going to be his if they have a prenuptial agreement, right?
Yeah, as long as the house, of course, is under his name.
Okay.
Let's be clear on that one. Basically, the house has been built by the foreigner, right? And the foreigner also is in the title of the house, which is in the tax declaration. So if he has a contract of lease over the land where the house is built and they got married, and they have a prenuptial agreement with respect to their properties, the house continues to be the separate property of the foreigner and the lease continues to be valid.
Okay, even if they split up afterwards.
Correct.
What happens if the Philippine is bitter and then they break up and then it's like, oh, wait until the lease is over, then I'm going to kick you out? Can she do that?
Actually, she can, because the right of the foreigner over the lease is over the land is only up to the duration of the lease, even if he owns the house. Because that's why it's very important to stipulate on your lease agreement your arrangement with respect to the house.
What happens after 25 years if the Filipina refuses to, renew the contract? How can the foreigner protect himself? Can he get his money back from his investments?
Technically, the foreigner cannot get what he invested after the end of the 25-year period, because in default, whatever he put up in that land belongs to the landowner. However, if they have stipulated in the execution of the lease, some sort of protection on his part with respect for him to be assured of the renewal of another 25 years, they can do that. That's why it's very important to have a very good lease contract drafted for you to be really protected for the 25-year period and the renewal of another 25-year period. But basically, you cannot impose to the landowner that you get the value of the house from the landowner at the end of 25-year period.
All right. So I have been asked this before, Gracie. Like, let's say, a married foreigner, they cannot own land. So what happens if the Filipina dies? If the foreigner can't own land in the Philippines, can they? Who's the next of kin?
Well, general rule is that foreigners cannot own land in the Philippines except through succession.
So he can inherit the land?
He can inherit it provided it is through a succession without a will. It has to be involuntarily given to him, because if the Filipino makes a will, definitely he cannot inherit the property by virtue of a will.
What if in the will it says that she wanted all their assets to be left to her husband?
That will invalidate the provision with respect to transferring or bequeathing the land to the foreigner, because the foreigner can only own properties through intestate succession. It cannot be done through testate or the one with a will. What they can do is, perhaps the Filipina can have a will with respect to other properties except for the land.
So meaning the foreigner can inherit the land as long as it's not stated in the will. Basically, just don't have
make a will.
Okay. Just a piece of advice though, guys. Do not speed the demise of your Filipino partner. That's not nice. Okay. So we're speaking of wills. Can a foreigner execute a valid will in the Philippines, or does he need to execute it in his home country?
With respect to properties in the Philippines, it's best that he executes his will in the Philippines according to the formalities of our country.
Okay. What if, for example, the foreigner has a condo unit here in the Philippines and he wants it to give to his child back in the West? So can he do that? Can he?
He can do that. Yeah, he can execute a will here in the Philippines, bequeathing that property in the Philippines to someone outside the country.
Okay, that's great. So they can execute a will here in the Philippines, and it will be valid.
Yeah, and even in a valid will in the Philippines can also be declared valid in another jurisdiction.
Oh, okay. Let's move on. There's a funny question from one of my subscribers. They've seen a lot of security guards here in the Philippines, like in 7-Eleven or even in McDonald's or any department stores with guns. So they're wondering, what do they actually do? They're just there to guard, or do they have the power to arrest you?
Security guards are private individuals, and just like any private citizens in the country, they can do the citizens arrest if they see somebody doing a crime. It's the same thing with these security guards. Well, their main role is to protect the establishment where they are guarding, right? So if there are things that they see unfavorable for the establishment, or someone is committing a crime, then of course they can enforce the law by doing a citizen's arrest or calling the proper authorities to help them address whatever concern in the area where he or she is.
Okay, so not that my viewers would ever do anything wrong, hopefully, but what should a foreigner do if they're ever arrested? Do they get one phone call like in the West? And any advice on who to call first if you're arrested?
Well, considering they're in a foreign country, the best person whom they should call first is their friend who knows to speak the dialect.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, because they'll be talking to the authorities, and even we are English speaking country, there is still a misinterpretation our of the English language, or misunderstanding of English statement. So it's best that he or she has to call a friend who is a local in that area to deal or help him deal with matters with the police authorities.
So it's best to do not talk to the police yet and call a friend to talk to them, because as you've mentioned,
Yeah, correct.
the translation might get lost along the conversation, and it's gonna be
lost in translation.
yeah, lost in translation. So do they have bail here? I assume it depends on the offense, right?
Yeah, it's a right of every person accused to bail. Actually, all crimes can be, all people can post bail, except there's exception. There are certain crimes that are considered non-bailable. Let's say murder. Murder, when the evidence of guilt is so strong that the judge can refuse your right to bail. So, but very few instances that the right of bail is being refused.
Talking about how slow everything here is, what if a foreigner is apprehended and in jail, how long can they expect to stay in there while waiting for to get bail?
So when there is already a complaint filed before the prosecutor's office, and they are already their liberty is already deprived, meaning they're already in prison, then they can only post bail once an information has been filed and the recommended bail has been set by the court.
But it can take time.
Yeah, it may take time.
Okay. But do they have like a different jail cell for foreigners, or are they gonna stay with the Filipinos the rest
There's
of the
no special jail for foreigners. They're gonna be mixed up with other felons regardless of race.
There's no such thing as special treatment for foreigners.
Even for Filipinos, there's no such thing as special treatment if you're in jail.
So guys, let me just wrap it up. Everything is very slow here in the Philippines, and you don't want to commit a crime here because the Philippines is the second worst jail cell situation in the world. I think the first one is Russia. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gracie.
Yeah, that's what I've read.
Oh, okay. So yes, just enjoy and avoid the pitfalls.
Avoid troubles. Yeah,
avoid troubles. Okay. Now, here's a disturbing fact I touched on during a recent interview. Apparently, the current age of consent is 12 years old, although I heard that might have recently changed. Can you shed light on that subject, Gracie?
When you mentioned about the sexual age of consent is 12, that refers to the crime of rape. Because if the child is below 12 years old, automatically the rape is statutory rape, meaning regardless of whether there was force or not, force or consent is not part of the element for prosecuting a person for statutory rape. However, if the child is 12 years old and above, if you will be accused of rape, then it has to be rape with the use of force or sexual assault or intimidation, and that is an element that has to be proven in the crime of rape for children, for victims who are 12 years old up to 18 years old. However, even if you will not fall for rape, there is another law that will govern sexual intercourse with children below 18 years old, and you may fall under violation of 7610 or the child abuse law. So be very careful, because you may not be prosecuted for the crime of rape, but you can be prosecuted for child abuse for having intercourse with a child below 18 years of age. So, word of advice, make sure that the person you are dating with or having sexual intercourse with is 18 and above.
Right.
That's how simple it is.
So it does not mean that a 12-year-old can have sex with an older adult. That age of consent, just to make it clear. No, it's only when
the age is only relevant with respect to prosecuting for the crime of rape, because there's an additional element if the child is 12 years old to 18 years old.
So do you think, Gracie, that law will be changed? Because it's very confusing when they say age of consent is 12 and it's not elaborated. Do you think it's going to be they're going to change that law in the future?
Actually, they're looking at increasing the age of consent to 18.
Yeah.
Because again, there's nothing in the provision of a revised penal code that specifically mentions about the age of consent. It's only indirectly discussed with respect to the crime of rape, because there are two different types of rape depending on the age of the child being victimized.
In short, the age of consent here to engage in sexual intercourse is not 12, just to make it clear. So Gracie, what about parents consenting to marriage for a young daughter? What's the minimum age for that?
Well, contracting parties in marriage has to be at least 18 years of age.
18 and above?
Yeah, at least. Yeah, 18 and above. That's the only allowed age to get married. But however, yeah, with respect to securing your marriage license, there are certain requirements that the civil registrar may need, especially if you are 18 years old to 23 years old. You will be required to have a parent's consent. And when you are 23 to 25 years old, you will be, from 23 to 25 years old, you will be required to have a parental advice.
Okay, so in general, like if you're getting married, if your age is 25 years old and below, like 18 to 25 years old, you have to get your parents' consent to apply for the marriage license. It's just like saying that, yeah, the parents are okay with this marriage. Okay, well, guys, you have to court your in-laws too for them to sign the.
Yeah, you're not only marrying the daughter, you're marrying the family as well.
Yeah, I've heard that a million times. But yeah, it's because of our traditions here. It's more, it's family oriented.
For me, 25 years below 25, 18 to 25 years old is, for me, it's too young to get married. So that's probably why they require the parents' consent or parental advice, is to guide their child if indeed he or she is really ready to get married at very young age.
Okay, but you know what? I'm not sure, but I think I've heard this before. In the US, there are some states that allow kids to get married as long as they get their parents' consent, like 16. I'm not sure what states, but here in the Philippines, you have to be at least 18 years old to be legally married. All right, so I just did this video last Tuesday, and I've mentioned about it's illegal to be alone with your girlfriend's children. Can you state the law, please?
Okay, it's under Republic Act 7610, or the Child Abuse Law, specifically Article 6, Section 10, subparagraph B. It states there that any person who shall keep or have in his company a minor 12 years or under, or who is 10 years or more his junior in any public or private place, shall suffer a certain penalty, provided that this provision shall not apply to any person who is related within the 4th degree of consanguinity or affinity, or any band recognized by law, local custom, and tradition, or acts in the performance of a school, social, moral, or legal duty. general rule is that you can't be with minor a child who is 12 years or under alone in a certain public or private place. However, there are exceptions to this one. As what I've mentioned earlier, if you're there with a child because he or she is like a relative of yours within the fourth degree of consanguinity or affinity, or by reason of bond, let's say you are living with her mother in the same house. And of course, it's just normal that she lives also with her mother in the same house. And there are times that her mother has to go to the market. So she'll be left alone in the house. And you being there in the house, you have the duty to be his legal guardian while her mother is out. So that falls under the exception.
I think I might have misunderstood that law, but there is an exception that you are allowed to be alone with your girlfriend's child in the house. But just to be clear, it doesn't stop the fact that there might be an angry ex or a nosy neighbor that will report you to the authorities, and you might still get questioned by the police.
Yeah, but as long as you have the defense of you're not doing anything and you have the obligation to be with the child by reason of your relationship to the mother, the police will understand. And besides, the police will also ask the child if, of course, if the child is able to speak. So, of course, you will not get into trouble as long as you're not doing anything wrong.
Right. Because I've heard a lot of my subscribers saying that when they're alone with their stepkids, or, they're walking in the mall with their girlfriend's child, they're getting a lot of dirty looks from locals. And if one of the concerned citizens will report them, then they might be questioned, obviously. But if they can prove the relationship to the child, then they should be okay.
Yeah, correct. But again, in the Philippines, you really cannot avoid these kinds of individuals who stereotype foreigners with Filipino child or children, because there are instances also that pedophiles have entered the country and they've been exploiting children. So that's why the people are quite worried with seeing this thing in public or even in private areas. So as responsible citizen, they would call the attention of the authorities. But if you're not doing anything wrong, you're there to be to as a legal guardian or has a legal duty towards the child you're with, you're pretty safe.
Perfect. So nothing to worry, guys. Okay, so now I want to reiterate something we touched on last time, our last interview. We said it clearly, but I think some people might have missed it about the cohabitation law. I had people leaving comments saying, so if I date a Filipina and she spends the night, she can take half of my assets, and that crazy stuff, like something like that. So let's restate this again. When talking about cohabitation law, you don't have all your assets at risk, just maybe half of the things you bought while together, if you can't show whose money bought them, right?
Yeah, although the Filipina did not contribute financially, but the court can consider her effort in carrying or maintenance of the family, of the household, taking care of the children as her contribution in the acquisition of that property. But just to make clear, it's the properties that are already only subject to the provision of cohabitation is only those that are acquired during the cohabitation.
Right.
So it will not include it will not include properties acquired prior to the cohabitation or after the cohabitation.
Yeah, because we're not talking about groceries and electric bills. Those are expenses. We're talking about vehicles, condos, refrigerators, things like that, things of value. And you said that all man had to do was keep his receipts for those things to show that he was the one that purchased them. And also,
especially with huge assets like, let's say, a vehicle.
mhm.
Yeah, because let's say for the fridge or the TV, the court might consider that you own half of it, considering that the wife or your partner took care of you or took care of your children if you're not yet married. So those things can be considered co-owned by the partners. But with respect to huge properties, it's wise to have receipts over them so that you can prove later on that this asset just belongs to me, because the money used to acquire this one is totally not acquired during our cohabitation, but a separate property of me prior to our cohabitation, or something like that, something to that effect.
Right. Because if, like, for instance, most foreigners are living alone, like, they have their own place, they have their own car, motorbikes, and they met this girl and they just start living together. So it only applies to whatever you guys accumulated during the cohabitation period, not before.
Correct.
So if you guys are just been together for 2 weeks, whatever you accumulated in 2 weeks, maybe a coffee maker, then yeah, sure, split it up. It's not even enough for, to pay a lawyer to make such claims. So meaning your bank accounts, your pension, or anything of value, especially if it's in the West, she has no claim. For some odd reason, some of the guys, just create their version of that cohabitation law in their heads and then just run with that image in their head. Obviously, if you're just sleeping with this girl for a day or two, she doesn't own anything of
remember, if anyone, or if the woman invoke this provision, she has to prove that you exclusively live as husband and wife. So how would you know that you're living as husband and wife if you've just been together for 2 days?
Exactly.
Or overnight.
Even a week. Like, for instance, you're just vacationing here for a week or two. She has the burden of proof to prove that, this, I should be entitled with this. And guys, by the way, this is not new. This is not a new law. It's always been there. And it's also applicable both for locals and foreigners, because somehow they think it's against the foreigners, where that, stacking this, the system is rigged. So Gracie, can we clarify the time of the cohabitation? Is it after 5 years, or does it matter? Is it automatically once you cohabit with this person and living as a husband and wife, is it automatically assumed that you're cohabitating? Because I've heard in the comment section, there was a comment there that it should kick in after 5 years of cohabitating.
Okay, the law does not specify how long you should cohabit in order for this provision of our law to apply. What is specifically stated here is that when you live exclusively with each other as husband and wife without the benefit of marriage. So there's no mention of that you have to live for a couple of years to be considered as living exclusively as husband and wife. As long as the person invoking this provision, when he or she is claiming ownership over the properties that are acquired during the cohabitation, is able to prove this element, then this provision kicks in. And maybe they have misinterpreted the 5-year period with respect to cohabitation, because we have this 5-year period in cohabitation that is with respect to securing one of the requirements in getting married. Like, if you cohabited for for at least 5 years, you can execute an affidavit of cohabitation for purposes of getting married. But for purposes of applying Article 147 or Article 148 of the civil law, it does not specify the duration of cohabitation.
So it automatically kicks in as long as you are living together and living exclusively as husband and wife like relationship, right?
Of course, yes.
That's why we have Gracie here to explain the laws here in the Philippines, because she is qualified to interpret those articles in our books. And if you're just going to listen to your friends who, some expats that been here for X amount of years, it doesn't give them the title to be expert, especially not on the laws of the Philippines. It's pretty tricky, guys. If I were you, talk to a reputable lawyer before, panicking. All right, guys, to wrap things up, what Gracie's telling us is that the Filipina might be only entitled to 50% of the assets acquired during the cohabitation period. And if you have proof that you purchase, if you spend something big on a property and it came from your own money, then you can keep your receipts. And besides, Gracie, have you encountered someone who filing for 147, like a Filipina, hey, I'm entitled to this? Have you had any clients here in Dumaguete?
Well, in my 5 years of experience as being a lawyer, or even prior to that one, being exposed to lawyers, I have not heard somebody invoking this provision in our law.
And also, I want to clarify and reiterate that unlike in the West, like women, sitting down with their lawyers and then trying to brainstorm what laws they can attack you with, it's not like that here. So basically, we're just here to give you advice to avoid future pitfalls. The laws are on the books. You can always talk to Gracie if something comes up, and you can rest easy, guys. Relax. You know what? Sometimes I feel bad if we're talking about laws here in the Philippines. It's not my intention to scare you guys away. It's our intention to actually make you informed, educate you, for you to do to make informed choices. That's the main reason why Grace is here on the show, to explain the confusing laws here in the Philippines, because even I lived my life here long enough and I'm not an expert, especially not on laws. I can just give you my advice on personal things, but it's still best to talk to a reputable lawyer. So guys, if you have further questions, please leave them in the comment section below, and maybe we can include that in our next segment. And you still doing online consultations, right, Gracie?
Correct. I still do online consultation. All they have to do is to send me an email, and then I'll guide them how I go about my online consultation.
Okay, so perfect, guys. As I've said, I'll leave Gracie's contact info in the description box, and if you happen to ask me in the comment section, I'll still provide it to you too. Well, I hope you enjoyed our segment today, and there are some clarifications, and you can rest easy. And again, we'll be back soon, me and Gracie. And as for me, I'll be back in just a few days for, with something unusual, maybe funny, want to make you cry, or something serious. But as always, I'm going to be back soon, guys. So stay tuned, all right? Till next time, folks. Bye.
If you think about it, I'm kind of like Hermione Granger, because I always do my homework before I present the subject for your consideration. I'm at the top of my class when it comes to the subject of East-West relations, and I'm more than happy to help you craft a love potion for that special someone. All I ask for my magical knowledge is that you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell to let you know when the next lesson has begun. And in case you're even thinking of looking elsewhere for your information, just remember that my wand is a lot bigger than yours. But if that's not the case, please shoot me an email